With that, I want to bring in MS Now White House reporter Laura Barone-Lopez, David Drucker, he's the senior writer at The Dispatch and an MS Now contributor, and former senior advisor to Kamala Harris, Mike Nellis. He has also worked on a number of Texas campaigns, including Better or Work's 2018 Senate run. Laura, I want to start with you. The president has been getting increasingly more involved. His team has said they want to basically pretend that he's on the ballot. He begged South Carolinians to vote that way. How are they thinking about the midterms now that we're getting closer and closer? Because before he was kind of backed out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even though they said that he was going to do some tours, an economic tour that never really materialized. And the president is someone who during his first term campaigned all the time and loved being out there on the stump. And we're not seeing that same level of campaigning. But obviously, they're worried. I mean, evident in the fact that he is going to Texas and he is going to be rallying with Ken Paxton. And this is, again, a state that Republicans aren't typically worried about, but they are concerned about it right now and what it means for control of the Senate. I'd say that, look, for months now, there have been people around the president, there have been Republican lawmakers who have been concerned about the direction that they were headed in towards the midterms because of the numbers on the economy, also because of numbers on immigration. I mean, across the board on things that they have usually been strong on, they're not strong on anymore, and they're running behind Democrats. So, but again, the president, and this is the sentiment of some in the White House as well, likes to blame Republicans and say that they're not doing enough, that Congress hasn't done enough to pass his agenda, and that if only they passed more key pieces of his agenda and gave him what he wanted, that then voters would be coming back to them. But when you talk to voters, like the voters that our colleague Alex Tabbitt talks to all the time, they're upset about the cost of living. And that is what is bringing Republicans down heading into this. And in the case of Texas specifically, I think you're starting to see some Latino voters shift in that key area of the Rio Grande Valley. They were new voters for Trump in 2024, and they're starting to shift a bit back now.
David, there has probably never been a president more in control of his own party. So it's laughable that Donald Trump sees himself as something separate from the Republican Party. I want to play something he said in that interview with Jake Sherman about the fundraising that is happening and whether or not he's going to spend any money this time around. Listen to this.
MAGA Inc., the super PAC that your allies control, has a lot of money and a lot of people.
Not my allies. I control it.
Okay. You and your allies.
$800 million.
Are you going to spend it?
It's funny. Nobody ever, of course, I'm going to do.
You're going to spend it in the midterms.
I could spend it on pretty much anything I want. I'm going to spend it I'm going to help Republicans.
What we know right now is that The Atlantic is reporting that he is spending it on an ad about himself nationalizing the race. Even with all of that money in the coffers, and I think it's $400 million, not the $800 million that the president is talking about there, is that enough to counter all of the things that Laura just talked about that voters are upset about across the board?
Well, I don't think it's enough to counter all of that, but it could make a difference in some key races, right? I mean, I always say that you don't need more money, but you need enough. Right. And the president, to be fair here, does have more than $400 million at his disposal when you count a few other outside groups, super PACs and the like, not to mention the money at the Republican National Committee that he essentially controls, even if he doesn't legally or specifically control. And if he deploys that money into some of these battleground House races and battleground Senate races, particularly in Texas, where Ken Paxton, because he's so flawed and scandal plagued, can't raise any money. Yeah, it could make a difference. Will it counter the atmosphere writ large? No, but we have seen, Eugene, over the years where a party is up against it, but they're able to hold on to some key seats. Not a lot, but more than a few, because they were able to deploy enough resources in strategic ways to at least avoid certain losses.
Yeah. Strategic is the key word there. President Trump has never been accused of sticking to strategy. Mike, you need money, but you also need a message. And even with all of the things that voters care about, even with Republicans up and down the ballot wanting to talk about affordability, right? J.D. Vance sent out a fundraising message that said, you don't have to give money. We understand that the grocery prices are high. he has to give it to them. And I want to look at this New York Times reporting that says Republicans were still, quote, holding out hope that MAGA Inc. would begin to invest in a challenging midterm cycle this summer. You'd think the president would be throwing as much money as possible to get his people elected and spare him political gridlock, spare him all of the investigations that we know are coming if Hakeem Jeffries becomes Speaker of the House. What do you think Republicans at this point can do to distance themselves from such an unpopular president?
I'm not really sure that there's anything they can do to distance themselves. Donald Trump simply won't allow him. A good politician understands, particularly in a midterm year, you got to be able to run away from me sometimes. Nancy Pelosi understood that. Barack Obama understood that. I do not think Donald Trump gets that. Like, no other president in the history of this country has ever made one party about him more than Donald Trump. The idea that this isn't going to be a referendum on him, even if he doesn't make it a referendum on himself, is sort of laughable. I think they're in trouble. And you played that, you showed that Senate map at the beginning of this. I think that Senate map might actually be larger. There's states on there that I think are competitive that Republicans are quietly very scared about. In particular, Mississippi is one that you're starting to hear a lot more people talking about. And I don't know how competitive and winnable that one is, but I think there's a real opportunity there. And you've got Nebraska on that map. I mean, that's my home state. The idea that we could flip a Senate seat in Nebraska, to me, if you went back in time 20 years, I simply wouldn't have believed you. That's how conservative the state is right now. And Dan Osborne's running a pretty great campaign against Pete Ricketts there. So I think that Trump's got a pretty serious problem here. If you look at the polling across the board, he's underwater on basically every single issue. He's underwater and negative on immigration and border security, which is supposed to be the Republican Party's best issue. Democrats have done a great job recruiting candidates. Republicans have done a really bad job, in my opinion, recruiting candidates. And we've had some duds on our side, but we've also cleaned some of that up, like Graham Plattner and switching him out to Troy Jackson, putting the main Senate race back in place. So I don't really know if there's very much the Republicans can do. The economy is bad, and they keep talking about it as if it's a messaging problem. But it's not a messaging problem. It's an actual problem. Like, unless they do something to increase wages, decrease costs, create jobs, which they don't have any agenda. You mentioned earlier, Trump says if the Republicans would just pass his agenda, people would like him more. What is Donald Trump's economic agenda right now, except slapping stupid tariffs on Canada and getting into fights with our friends in Europe? It just doesn't make any sense. And I think people are just tired of it, and they're ready to turn the page on this moment in time in our politics.
Yeah. You know what? Good leaders typically don't take too much credit, and they take a lot of blame, maybe more blame than they're due. Let's play for you guys some presidents and how they reacted to midterm losses, both Republicans and Democrats.
We were held accountable yesterday, and I accept my share of the responsibility in the result of the elections.
The elections were close. The cumulative effect
It's a thumping.
Some election nights are more fun than others. Some are exhilarating. Some are humbling.
Now, David, to be fair, we don't know how November 3rd is going to work out, but I can imagine, and I don't think you could imagine, a world in which Donald Trump gets in front of the American people on the 3rd or the 4th and says anything similar to what George W. Bush, President Clinton, or President Obama said there, David.
And this is a hallmark of how President Trump reacts to elections where he doesn't like the outcome. And you can begin with the Iowa caucuses all the way back in the 2016 presidential campaign. He lost to Ted Cruz, so it was rigged, right? And we can go on the through line there through January 6th and so on. And so what I think you ultimately get here, though, right, because this is predictable and we get it, Eugene, is I think the president has often lost political opportunities to expand his base of support and create more space for the American people to give him space to accomplish the things that he wants to accomplish. Instead, he's endlessly polarizing, and it doesn't work well for him when he's the incumbent, right? I think we need to point this out. He is a very good out-party candidate when he is not in office. He's very good at identifying where voters are and messaging in a way that makes them feel heard. And when he is the incumbent, whether in the first presidency or the second presidency, he simply can accept no blame. It's worse than most presidents who hate accepting blame. Right. And he therefore is a much less effective political leader as an incumbent than he is as the challenger candidate.
Mike, sometimes when I talk to Republicans, they tell me that, if they could just get the president on message. I believe the president is on message for himself. I think when he goes out and talks about the election, what he talks about is the Save America Act, his kind of voter suppression bill. When he goes out and talks about the election, he talks about, USPS and the shenanigans they're creating to make it harder for election officials to do their jobs in some of these states. It feels like he is on a message that works for him, but not on one that Republicans can take to the bank.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's the most self-interested person we've ever seen sit behind the Resolute desk. So he just lets his sort of daily whims guide whatever strategic decisions that he's making, to the extent that there is a strategic decision or thought inside his head. Again, I just don't think this is a messaging problem. And I think when Republicans go on TV and they say that, they're just coping. It is an actual problem. And I've made this point. I think the Biden administration made the same problem in the final 2 years of its term, too, is that the economy was in really bad shape under Joe Biden. Now, I don't think that was necessarily Joe Biden's fault. There was an inflationary crisis that he was working to combat, which, by the way, was created by Donald Trump, in my opinion, in the first term. And Joe Biden wasn't able to fix it fast enough. But Trump has come in and made everything worse while promising to make everything less expensive, continues to gaslight people into believing that we're in this golden age of America while his net worth is getting higher and yours is likely getting smaller. So I just don't think it's a messaging problem. Like, they need actual concrete solutions to how they're going to deal with the job market, the housing crisis in the country, affordability, healthcare premiums skyrocketing, electricity prices. They have no answer right now on AI data centers, which is becoming the sneakiest issue in the country. It's impacting multiple different Senate races, including Ohio. It might be the reason that Sherrod Brown makes his return in the state right now. So they need real solutions, and they need to get back to work. And Congress is coming back into session in a few weeks. They have an opportunity to try to do something, but nothing in the last year and a half or so has shown that the Republican Party can get its act together and actually pass legislation that might actually improve your life.
No one lost money betting that the Republicans in Congress might not be able to pass any bills. So we won't hold our breath on that. Mike Nellis, thank you so much. Laura Braun Lopez, you will be back later on in the show with some of your exclusive reporting. And David, you're sticking around with me.